Amelia stood before the shimmering fountain, the water swirling with a new intensity since her first connection. Days had turned into weeks, each sunrise bringing a renewed focus on her training. The guardian, ever patient, had guided her through the basics of manipulating the fountain's energy, teaching her to channel it through her body with increasing precision. Today's lesson, however, was different. The guardian's expression held a hint of solemnity, as she led Amelia to a section of the chamber wall adorned with ancient murals. The paintings depicted scenes of a bygone era, towering figures with flowing robes battling monstrous creatures, the world fracturing under the weight of their conflict. These, the guardian began, her voice echoing softly in the chamber, are the chronicles of our past. A time when the veil between realms was thin, and creatures of chaos threatened to spill into your world. Amelia traced the faded figures with her fingertips, a shiver running down her spine. The murals felt real, the energy pulsating from them almost tangible. The guardian continued, were created by a higher power to maintain balance. We fought countless battles, pushing back the tide of darkness and protecting your world from devastation. She pointed to a mural depicting a lone guardian, her form radiating light, facing a horde of grotesque creatures. That, she said, her voice filled with a hint of sadness, was my predecessor. She sacrificed herself to seal the tear in the veil, trapping the chaos within for millennia. Amelia's heart hammered in her chest. The weight of responsibility she felt suddenly doubled. But the god, she stammered. He was trying to break that seal. The guardian nodded grimly. Dr. Vance, corrupted by his thirst for power, used you as a pawn in his attempt to unleash the chaos once more. Thankfully, you awakened your potential in time. Silence descended upon the chamber, the weight of the past hanging heavy in the air. These murals, the guardian finally continued, her voice regaining its strength, hold more than just history. They are a training tool. Amelia looked back at the paintings, a new understanding dawning. Each battle, the guardian explained, contained a lesson, a strategy for channeling energy and combating the forces of darkness. Today, you will face a reflection of these battles, a test of your newfound skills. With a wave of her hand, the guardian activated a hidden mechanism within the wall. The murals flickered, then glowed with an otherworldly light. The figures began to detach from the artwork, solidifying into spectral forms that mirrored the creatures depicted. Amelia found herself facing a fearsome beast, its eyes glowing with malice, its claws dripping with an unnatural darkness. Her heart pounded in her chest, yet she stood firm, her hand outstretched, the fountain's energy thrumming through her veins. The battle that followed was a blur of movement and energy. Amelia, fueled by the knowledge gleaned from the murals, channeled her power with newfound finesse. She dodged the beast's attacks, her movements becoming more fluid and precise. With a focused burst of energy, she repelled the creature, its spectral form shimmering before dissipating into the air. Exhausted but exhilarated, Amelia turned to the guardian, a smile lighting up her face. I did it! She exclaimed. The guardian smiled back, her eyes filled with pride. You did well, Amelia, she said. You have learned to harness your power, to use it strategically. But remember, this is just the beginning. There are countless battles to be fought, countless strategies to master. You have a long road ahead of you, but I have faith in you. Amelia, her gaze fixed on the fading murals, felt a sense of determination settle over her. She had glimpsed the past, the sacrifices made to protect her world. The burden of responsibility was heavy, but she no longer felt alone. She had a purpose, a place in this world of gods and guardians. Thank you, she said, her voice filled with gratitude. Thank you for guiding me, for believing in me. The guardian placed a hand on Amelia's shoulder. This is not just about my belief, Amelia, she replied. This is about yours. You have the potential to become a beacon of hope, a protector unlike any other. Now rest. Tomorrow, we train again. Weeks bled into months as Amelia delved deeper into her training. The once daunting murals became testaments to her progress. She could not only channel the energy with increasing control but also weave it into intricate constructs, deflecting spectral attacks with shimmering shields and launching focused blasts that sent her opponents scattering. The physical training was no less demanding. The Guardian, surprisingly agile for her ethereal form, put Amelia through grueling workouts that honed her reflexes and pushed her physical limits. Days blurred into nights, filled with sweat, exertion, and a growing sense of accomplishment. One day, the Guardian announced a change in routine. "The time has come," she declared, her voice echoing through the chamber, "for you to step outside these walls and experience the world you are sworn to protect." A flicker of excitement, mixed with a tremor of apprehension, shot through Amelia. The world beyond the hidden chamber was a mystery, a place she hadn't set foot in since her fateful encounter with Dr. Vance. The Guardian led her through a series of winding tunnels, the air growing cooler and damper with each step. Finally, they reached a hidden doorway, disguised as a section of rough-hewn rock. With a soft push, the doorway yielded, revealing a bustling city street bathed in the warm glow of the afternoon sun. Amelia blinked, momentarily overwhelmed by the sights and sounds. Cars honked, people hurried along sidewalks, and a symphony of urban life filled the air. It was a world so different from the ancient chamber, a world teeming with oblivious energy. "Look closer, Amelia," the Guardian instructed, her voice soft yet firm. Amelia focused her gaze, and the world shimmered slightly. Tendrils of energy pulsed around buildings, swirling through power lines, and coursing through the bodies of unsuspecting humans. It was a hidden language, an intricate web of power that she was only beginning to understand. "See how the world thrives on this energy," the Guardian explained. "It flows through everything, from the smallest insect to the tallest skyscraper. It is our duty to ensure this balance remains unbroken." Suddenly, a sharp tug at the edge of Amelia's perception caught her attention. It was a faint, discordant note within the city's vibrant energy symphony, a flicker of darkness emanating from a nearby alleyway. "What is it?" the Guardian asked, her voice laced with concern. "Something unnatural," Amelia replied, her gaze fixed on the alley. "There's darkness down there, a disturbance in the energy flow." The Guardian's expression hardened. "It seems your first test has arrived sooner than expected. Are you ready, Amelia?" Amelia took a deep breath, the months of training lending her strength and resolve. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "I am." With a determined nod, she and the Guardian stepped into the shadows of the alleyway, ready to face the unknown threat that lurked within. The stench of garbage and decay assaulted Amelia as she entered the alley. Broken crates and overflowing dumpsters cast long, grotesque shadows in the dim light filtering down from the street above. The unnatural energy thrummed stronger here, a sickly counterpoint to the city's vibrant pulse. "Stay alert," the Guardian whispered, her form shimmering faintly in the gloom. "Whatever is causing this disturbance, it's likely feeding on the negative emotions of the city." Amelia strained her senses, the energy signature coalescing into a more definite form. It was centered at the far end of the alley, a writhing mass of inky darkness that pulsed with a malevolent hunger. As they approached, the darkness coalesced further, taking the shape of a hulking, grotesque figure with glowing red eyes and razor-sharp claws. "A shadow feeder," the Guardian hissed, recognition flashing in her eyes. "These creatures thrive on negativity, despair, and fear. We must act quickly before it grows stronger." The shadow feeder let out a guttural roar, the sound echoing off the grimy brick walls. It lunged at them, its claws tearing through the air. Amelia barely had time to react, the Guardian shoving her aside just as the creature's attack ripped through the spot where she had been standing a second ago. Adrenaline surged through Amelia. She raised her hand, focusing the fountain's energy into a crackling ball of light. The Guardian, meanwhile, engaged the shadow feeder in a whirlwind of shimmering blows, her ethereal form surprisingly agile against the creature's brutish strength. Amelia launched her projectile, the ball of light exploding against the shadow feeder's chest. It roared in pain, momentarily staggering back. But the wound seemed to cauterize instantly, the darkness pulsating with a renewed hunger. "It feeds on our attacks," Amelia realized, a sense of dread gnawing at her. The more we fight, the stronger it gets. The Guardian landed beside her, her face grim. Then we must find another way. We need to disrupt its connection to the city's negative energy. But how? Amelia asked, her mind racing. The Guardian glanced around the alley, her gaze falling on a nearby fire escape. There, she said, pointing. The higher floors. The energy signature is weaker up there. You think we can lure it away? Amelia questioned, unsure if they could outrun the creature. We have to try, the Guardian replied, her voice laced with urgency. Create a distraction, draw its attention upwards. I'll weaken its connection to the ground as we go. With a determined nod, Amelia focused her energy once more. This time, she didn't form a projectile but instead channeled the energy into a blinding flash of light, illuminating the entire alley. The shadow feeder screeched, momentarily disoriented by the sudden brightness. Seizing the opportunity, Amelia and the Guardian sprang into action. Amelia dashed towards the fire escape, her heart pounding in her chest. The shadow feeder recovered quickly, its enraged bellow echoing as it lumbered after her. As she scrambled up the metal stairs, she glanced back. The Guardian remained below, her form shimmering brightly as she weaved intricate patterns with her hands, disrupting the flow of darkness that clung to the ground. Reaching the rooftop, Amelia took a deep breath, surveying the maze of buildings before her. She needed to keep the shadow feeder occupied until they reached an area with minimal negative energy. Schools, parks, anywhere with a dominant source of positive emotions. Spotting a water tower in the distance, Amelia took off across the rooftops, the shadow feeder in hot pursuit. The chase weaved through a labyrinth of air conditioners and satellite dishes, the creature's heavy footsteps echoing across the metal surfaces. Just as Amelia reached the base of the water tower, a wave of exhaustion washed over her. Her legs burned, and her breath came in ragged gasps. Glancing back, she saw the shadow feeder closing the distance, its eyes glowing with malice. There was no time to rest. With a final burst of energy, Amelia propelled herself upwards, clinging to the ladder that led to the top of the water tower. The climb felt agonizingly slow, the shadow feeder's guttural roars growing louder with each passing second. Finally, she reached the top, collapsing onto the metal platform with a gasp. Below, the shadow feeder clambered onto the rooftop, its frustrated shrieks echoing in the night sky. Amelia looked out at the cityscape, searching for a sign of the Guardian. But the city was vast, a sea of twinkling lights stretching as far as the eye could see. Suddenly, a warmth spread through the air, washing over Amelia like a gentle wave. Looking down, she saw the Guardian materialize beside her, her form shimmering faintly. I weakened its connection, the Guardian panted, leaning heavily against the water tower. But it will recover. We must keep moving. Amelia nodded, her eyes fixed on the distant skyline. We should find a place where there's a lot of positive energy, she suggested. Like a park or a library. The Guardian nodded in agreement. Yes, that would help. Come, let's go. She took Amelia's hand, their fingers laced together as they raced across the rooftops once more. The night air was cool against Amelia's skin, and she welcomed the freedom of running through the city without fear. But she couldn't help but worry about the Guardian's fatigue. She glanced over her shoulder, concerned that the shadow feeder might have regained its strength. Are you okay? She asked, noticing the Guardian's labored breathing. I'll manage, the Guardian replied, her voice steady. But we must hurry. It's growing stronger with each moment that passes. They leapt from rooftop to rooftop, their footsteps echoing against the concrete and metal. As they approached a residential area, Amelia spotted a library nearby. There! She exclaimed, pointing. Let's go there. The Guardian followed her gesture, her eyes scanning the area. Yes, that should work. Lead the way. Amelia dashed across the last stretch of rooftop, her heart racing as they neared the library. The shadow feeder growled in the distance, its presence growing stronger with each passing second. She didn't know how much longer they could keep this up. As they reached the edge of the roof, Amelia paused for a moment, looking down at the alley below. Here, she said, taking a deep breath. I'll create a distraction. You find somewhere to hide inside the library? The Guardian nodded, her expression grim. Understood. Just be careful. With one final glance back, she vanished, her form shimmering and fading into the shadows. Taking a deep breath, Amelia focused her energy, channeling it into a bright burst of light. The alley exploded with radiance, illuminating the dark corners and sending the shadow feeder reeling back with a shriek of pain. It scrambled to cover its eyes, leaving Amelia just enough time to leap from the rooftop and land lightly on the ground. The distraction was enough. With the shadow feeder momentarily stunned, she raced across the alley and into the library. Inside, books lined the walls from floor to ceiling, their spines gleaming in the soft light of the reading lamps. The scent of old paper and ink filled her nostrils, a comforting aroma that always made her feel at home. She darted through the aisles, weaving between the rows of shelves, her heart pounding in her chest. The shadow feeder's cries grew louder and more desperate with each passing second, its shadowy form slinking closer to the entrance of the library. She spotted the Guardian crouched behind a bookcase, her eyes narrowed with determination. It's almost here, Amelia whispered, her breath coming in ragged gasps. We have to hurry. The Guardian nodded, her expression grim. I'm ready, she replied, taking Amelia's hand in hers. On my mark, we'll strike together. As the shadow feeder burst through the doors of the library, Amelia and the Guardian sprang into action. They threw everything they had at the monster, their energy blending together in a dazzling display of light. The shadow feeder howled in pain, its shadowy form writhing and twisting as it was bombarded by the onslaught of positive energy. The battle raged on for what felt like an eternity, the library filling with the cacophony of their attacks. But slowly, the shadow feeder began to weaken, its movements growing less graceful and more desperate. Finally, with a last, defeated shriek, it dissipated into nothingness, leaving Amelia and the Guardian standing in the midst of the wreckage they had created. Panting, Amelia looked around, her heart racing. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and burned books, and the light fixtures dangled dangerously from their wires. She turned to the Guardian, tears streaming down her face. We did it, she whispered. We stopped it. The Guardian nodded, her expression solemn. Yes, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But we can't stay here. The authorities will be here soon, and they'll want to know what happened. She glanced at the pile of rubble where the shadow feeder had been moments ago. We need to clean up this mess and get out of here before anyone sees us. Together, they began to work, using their powers to repair the damage they had done and put the library back in order. They moved quickly and silently, their movements almost instinctive after all they had been through. As they worked, Amelia couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and exhaustion wash over her. It had been a long night, and she knew they both needed some rest. When they were finally finished, they met outside, under the starry sky. The library was quiet again, and the city slept peacefully around them. Amelia looked up at the Guardian, feeling a strange sense of gratitude and affection welling up inside her. Thank you, she said simply. For everything. The Guardian smiled, her eyes meeting hers. You're welcome, Amelia. It was my honor to help. She paused, considering her next words. But you know, I think you don't need my protection anymore. You've proven that you can defend yourself against the darkness. Amelia considered this for a moment, feeling a mix of pride and uncertainty wash over her. She had come a long way since she had first met the Guardian, and she knew that the world was still a dangerous place. But maybe, just maybe, she could face it on her own terms now. You're right, she said finally, meeting the Guardian's gaze with newfound determination. I think I am ready. The Guardian smiled, her expression both proud and sad. I know you are, Amelia. You have the strength and the courage to face whatever comes your way. But remember, I'm always here if you need me. You only have to ask. They stood there for a moment longer, silently taking in the night sky and the sounds of the city around them. Then, with a nod of farewell, the Guardian turned and disappeared into the shadows, vanishing into the night like a ghost. Alone once more, Amelia took a deep breath and began to walk back towards her apartment. As she walked, she felt a new sense of purpose and determination coursing through her veins. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, and that there would be more battles to fight against the darkness. But she also knew that she was stronger than she had ever been before, and that she would never be alone in the fight. As she rounded the corner and saw the warm glow of her apartment window ahead, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. This was her home, her sanctuary. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would always have this place to return to regroup and prepare for whatever came next. And so, with renewed vigor and a newfound sense of self-assurance, Amelia stepped inside, closing the door behind her and beginning the next chapter of her life. Exhaustion slammed into Amelia like a tidal wave the moment she crossed the threshold of her apartment. The adrenaline that had fueled her through the battle with the Shadow Feeder had finally burned itself out, leaving behind a dull ache in every muscle and a tremor in her hands. The apartment, once a haven of familiarity, felt strangely foreign. The walls seemed to close in, the warm glow of the lamp harsh and unforgiving. The remnants of her normal life, a half-read book on the coffee table, a mug of forgotten tea, mocked her newfound purpose. The fight at the library replayed in her mind, a whirlwind of light and shadow. The creature's guttural roars echoed in her ears, and the stench of its decay clung to her senses. Bile rose in her throat, and she stumbled toward the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. Looking into the mirror, Amelia barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were rimmed with red, her hair a tangled mess, and a faint smudge of soot marked her cheek. Yet, beneath the exhaustion, a new glint of determination flickered in her gaze. The Guardian's words echoed in her mind. "You have the strength and the courage to face whatever comes your way." A bittersweet pang of loneliness settled in her chest. The Guardian had been a constant presence, a source of guidance and reassurance. Now Amelia was alone, or at least, she felt alone. But then, a different thought struck her. She wasn't truly alone. The energy pulsed within her, a constant reminder of her connection to the fountain, to the invisible web of energy that thrummed through the city. In a way, she carried the Guardian's legacy within her, the knowledge and skills passed down through generations of protectors. Stepping back from the mirror, Amelia straightened her shoulders, a newfound resolve hardening her features. She would honor the Guardian's trust, become the protector the city needed. The fight at the library was just the beginning. There would be others like the Shadow Feeder, creatures drawn to the city's darkness. She rummaged through her closet, pulling out a pair of worn sneakers and a comfortable sweatshirt. The Guardian had taught her that flashy costumes were necessary, just practicality and focus. As dawn painted the sky with streaks of pink and orange, Amelia slipped back out into the city. The bustling streets held a different meaning now. Every hurried step, every honking car, was a pulse of energy she could sense, a life force she was sworn to protect. The city thrummed with chaotic beauty, a tapestry woven with light and darkness. And Amelia, the lone Guardian, stood ready to face whatever shadows threatened to unravel its delicate balance. Days blurred into weeks as Amelia settled into her new routine. Sleep became a luxury, replaced by a constant vigil. She patrolled the city at night, her senses attuned to the subtle shifts in the energy flow, searching for any sign of disturbance. The city, once a familiar landscape, became a hidden world. Amelia learned to read the subtle language of the pulsing energy. A spike in negativity near a dark alleyway might indicate a mugging in progress, a flicker of despair from a lone figure on a bridge of potential suicide. Her interventions were swift and silent. Using bursts of focused energy, she'd disarm attackers, deflect blows, or even create a diversion, allowing potential victims to escape. The news reported a sudden rise in accidental muggings foiled by bystanders, a string of lucky escapes that left the authorities baffled. But Amelia couldn't be everywhere. The city was vast, and the darkness seemed to be spreading. She encountered more shadow feeders, their numbers growing with each passing week. They were becoming bolder, venturing closer to areas with strong positive energy, testing the city's defenses. One night, patrolling her usual route, Amelia felt a familiar tremor in the energy field. It was a shadow feeder, but unlike the others, this one pulsed with a darker, more potent energy. Its presence felt like a suffocating weight settling on her chest. Following the trail, she arrived at a dilapidated amusement park on the city's outskirts. The abandoned roller coasters cast grotesque shadows in the moonlight, and the carnival music, a haunting melody on a rusted organ, played on loop. As Amelia cautiously entered the park, the shadow feeder materialized before her. It was larger than any she had faced before, its form radiating an oppressive malice. It let out a guttural roar, the sound echoing through the deserted park. This wasn't a creature she could subdue on her own. Fear threatened to overwhelm her, but she pushed it down. The city, its vulnerable citizens, were counting on her. The battle that ensued was unlike anything Amelia had experienced. The shadow feeder was a formidable opponent, its attacks fueled by the negativity that permeated the abandoned park. Every blow she landed seemed to be absorbed, its monstrous form growing stronger with each exchange. Despair began to gnaw at Amelia. Was this it? Was she destined to fall, another victim of the ever-encroaching darkness? But then she remembered the Guardian's words. "There's always a way, Amelia. You just have to find it." She looked around the desolate park, her gaze falling on the rusted Ferris wheel, its skeletal frame reaching towards the moonlit sky. An idea sparked in her mind. This wasn't just a battle of strength, but of strategy. The shadow feeder thrived on negativity, so she needed to create a counterpoint, a surge of positive energy. Focusing, Amelia channeled the energy from the fountain, amplifying it to create a blinding flash of light. As the shadow feeder recoiled, momentarily stunned, she raced towards the Ferris wheel, ignoring the creature's enraged bellow. Reaching the base, she pushed her energy outwards, weaving it into the metal structure. The dormant lights flickered awake, one by one, bathing the park in a warm glow. The haunting music sputtered, then died, replaced by a joyful jingle, a forgotten melody from happier times. The change was instantaneous. The negative energy that had saturated the park seemed to dissipate, replaced by a wave of nostalgia and innocent joy. As the Ferris wheel spun, casting a kaleidoscope of colored light across the ground, the shadow feeder shrieked in agony. Weakened, its form flickered and wavered. With a final, desperate lunge, it attacked, but Amelia was ready. Deflecting the blow with a shield of pure energy, she focused a concentrated beam of light directly at the creature's core. The shadow feeder dissolved in a burst of darkness, leaving behind only a faint echo of negativity. Amelia collapsed onto the dusty ground, her body drained but a triumphant smile spreading across her face. She had done it. She had not only defeated the shadow feeder but had also found a way to fight them without resorting to brute force. This was a victory not just for her, but for the city itself. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky, Amelia stood tall, the Ferris wheel casting a warm glow behind her. The city, awakening from its slumber, was oblivious to the battle that had just transpired. But Amelia knew. She was their silent guardian, the protector against the encroaching shadows. And as she walked away from the amusement park, she knew this was just the beginning. There would be more threats, more battles. But she was no longer afraid. The city had its protector, a guardian fueled by the light that pulsed within her, a legacy entrusted by the one who had come before. Time passed, and Amelia's reputation as the city's unseen protector grew. News reports buzzed with unexplainable occurrences, muggings thwarted by unseen forces, carjackings foiled by bursts of dazzling light. The public, desperate for a reason for these miracles, began to whisper of a guardian angel, a silent protector watching over them. Amelia, however, remained a phantom. She clung to the shadows, a lone warrior against the encroaching darkness. The victories, though thrilling, were often bittersweet. The city teemed with negativity, a constant breeding ground for the shadow feeders. No matter how many she vanquished, new ones seemed to take their place. One evening, Amelia felt a tremor in the energy unlike any she'd encountered before. It wasn't the familiar, localized spike of a shadow feeder, but a vast, undulating wave of negativity emanating from the heart of the city. Dread coiled in her stomach. This wasn't a single creature. It was something far more potent, something that threatened to engulf the entire city in darkness. Following the trail, she arrived at the imposing silhouette of Oakwood Mental Asylum, a place shrouded in local legends of despair and suffering. The asylum had been abandoned for years, its windows boarded up, its grounds overgrown with weeds. Yet, from within, the wave of negativity pulsed with a terrifying intensity. A shiver ran down Amelia's spine. This wasn't a fight she could face alone. She needed help, someone who understood the nature of the darkness she was about to confront. With a heavy heart, Amelia made a decision. It was time to seek out the one person she knew might have answers, the one person who might help, Dr. Vance's assistant, Raymond. The man had tried to unleash chaos upon the city, the very reason she was on this path. Surely his assistant would know all about his evil doings? The thought of facing him filled Amelia with a mix of anger and apprehension. Yet, she knew the potential consequences of inaction were far worse. The city, its people, hung in the balance. Steeling her nerves, Amelia approached Vance's secluded mansion, a place that had always felt like a monument to his twisted ambition. The imposing gates stood ajar, as if beckoning her in. Inside, the air hung heavy with the scent of dust and decay. The opulent furnishings were shrouded in cobwebs, a testament to the mansion's decline. Amelia followed an unseen pull, her senses tingling with anticipation. She found Raymond in a dimly lit study, surrounded by stacks of ancient texts and glowing computer screens displaying arcane symbols. He looked young and maniacal, much like his deceased mentor. "Amelia," he rasped, his voice laced with surprise. "I wasn't expecting you." Amelia stepped into the room, her gaze locked on his. "There's a darkness at Oakwood," she said, her voice firm. "A power so vast it threatens to consume the city." Raymond's eyes narrowed. "So you've finally stumbled upon the true potential of the Veil," he said, a hint of amusement creeping into his voice. "But why come to me? You, the supposed guardian, should be able to handle it yourself. After all, it's due to you that Dr. Vance can't continue his work." Amelia ignored the barb. "This isn't something I can fight alone," she pressed. "You understand this darkness better than anyone. I need your help." Raymond chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Help you? After all I've done? You're naive, Amelia. The darkness is not something to be fought, it's to be harnessed." Amelia's jaw clenched. "The darkness destroys. It feeds on suffering. It's the antithesis of everything this city stands for." Raymond studied her for a long moment, a flicker of something akin to respect crossing his features. "Perhaps you're right," he conceded finally. "But there may be another way. A way to turn the darkness against itself." Intrigued despite her reservations, Amelia listened as Raymond outlined a daring plan. It was a gamble, a dance with the very forces she swore to protect. But it was their only hope of stopping the entity at Oakwood before it consumed the city. As dawn painted the sky with the promise of a new day, Amelia stood at the gates of Oakwood, Raymond by her side, an unlikely alliance forged in the face of a shared enemy. The air crackled with anticipation, the weight of the city's fate resting on their shoulders. Taking a deep breath, Amelia stepped through the gates, ready to confront the darkness at its source, and in the process, perhaps find a way to redeem not just the city, but the man who had almost brought it to ruin. As they walked through the eerily quiet streets, Raymond seemed to grow more confident, his steps firmer. Perhaps it was the knowledge that he was finally facing his creation, or perhaps it was the renewed sense of purpose Amelia had given him. Either way, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of hope. They reached the center of town, where the Veil's power was at its strongest. The air thickened with menace, and the very stones beneath their feet seemed to pulse with dark energy. Raymond nodded grimly, his expression solemn. "Here it is," he murmured. "The heart of the matter." Amelia drew her sword, her hands trembling slightly. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the whispers of the Veil. Raymond studied the glowing portal for a moment before answering. "We must find a way to turn the darkness against itself. To use its own power to destroy it." He gestured to a nearby stone altar, its surface engraved with symbols that made Amelia's skin crawl. "There is a ritual that must be performed. It will allow us to harness the power of the veil, but it must be done precisely, or we will all be consumed." With shaking hands, Raymond began to chant ancient words, his voice rising and falling in a hypnotic rhythm. As he spoke, tendrils of darkness crawled from the veil, drawn to the altar like moths to a flame. Amelia watched in awe and terror as the ritual progressed, her heart racing as the darkness coalesced into a writhing mass above the altar. Finally, Raymond stepped forward, his voice growing stronger. "By the power of the veil, I command you," he cried, "to be used against your master." The darkness seemed to twist and writhe in agony as it was forced to obey the command. "Return to the veil, and consume that which created you." With a final, agonized wail, the darkness vanished, leaving only a faint trace of malevolence lingering in the air. The veil above them began to weaken, its tendrils snapping like twigs as they lost their hold on the world. Slowly, the glow faded from the sky, and the streets of Oakwood were bathed in the warm light of dawn. Amelia looked at Raymond, her eyes filled with awe and admiration. "You did it," she breathed. "You actually did it." Raymond smiled tiredly, nodding. "I could not have done it alone," he replied. "You, Amelia, you gave me the strength to see it through. To find a way to use the darkness against itself." He took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. "And now," he continued, "I believe we have a city to save. The Order of Dawn will not rest until Oakwood is restored to its former glory, and the people who live here are free from the shadows that once threatened to consume them." As they turned to leave the town, Amelia reached out and took Raymond's hand. They walked together, their steps slow and measured, their future uncertain, but their bond unbreakable. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, and with Raymond's newfound purpose and her unwavering faith in him, they would bring hope back to Oakwood and to the world beyond. The sun rose higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the cobblestone streets. The birds sang their morning songs, and the scent of spring filled the air. Amelia glanced over at Raymond, her heart swelling with gratitude. She couldn't help but wonder what the future held for them, but for now, she was content to walk by his side, knowing that they would face it together. As they neared the outskirts of town, they passed by the ruins of the once powerful Order of the Veil. The stones lay scattered about, the symbols carved into them weathered and faded. It was a stark reminder of the price they had paid to free Oakwood from its grasp. But they didn't dwell on the past. They kept moving forward, their eyes fixed on the horizon, their hearts filled with determination. The journey back to the keep was long and arduous, but Amelia and Raymond didn't mind. They talked of their hopes and dreams for the future, of the plans they had to rebuild Oakwood and restore it to its former glory. As they spoke, they couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over them, a peace that they hadn't known before, a peace born of purpose and the knowledge that they were truly meant to be together. Finally, they arrived back at the keep, their feet sore and weary, but their spirits high. They were greeted by the other members of the Order of Dawn, their faces alight with relief and joy. Amelia and Raymond exchanged glances, their hands clasped tightly, and for a moment, they were the only two people in the world who truly understood the weight of their shared burden, the magnitude of their accomplishment. As the days turned into weeks and then into months, Oakwood began to heal. The people rebuilt their homes, tended to their gardens, and slowly but surely, life returned to the city. The Order of Dawn, led by Raymond and Amelia, worked tirelessly to restore the town to its former glory, tearing down the last remaining remnants of the Order of the Veil and replacing them with statues of hope and courage. As they neared the outskirts of town, they passed by the ruins of the once powerful Order of the Veil. The stones lay scattered about, the symbols carved into them weathered and faded. It was a stark reminder of the price they had paid to free Oakwood from its grasp. But they didn't dwell on the past. They kept moving forward, their eyes fixed on the horizon, their hearts filled with determination. Raymond, though forever marked by his past, threw himself into his work with a newfound zeal. A flicker of guilt still haunted his eyes, but his actions spoke volumes. He mentored the younger members of the Order, sharing his vast knowledge and experience, determined to ensure such darkness wouldn't rise again. Amelia, the once solitary guardian, found a place of belonging within the order. She trained the new recruits, her skills honed by countless battles, but her focus had shifted. It wasn't just about vanquishing shadows, but about nurturing the light within the city, fostering a sense of community and resilience. One crisp autumn evening, as they stood overlooking the bustling town square, Raymond turned to Amelia, a question lingering in his eyes. "Do you think there's more out there?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Amelia smiled, a glint of understanding sparkling in her gaze. "There's always more," she replied. "But for now, we have a city to rebuild, a future to create." Together, they looked out at the horizon, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Beyond the city limits, a vast wilderness stretched out, an unknown world teeming with possibilities. Perhaps, one day, they would venture out, their bond forged in the crucible of darkness leading them towards a new light, a new adventure. But for now, they had Oakwood, and each other, and that was all that mattered. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories, give us a like if you want to see more, and drop a comment below to let us know your thoughts.